super low carb is the number one thing we see. You know, guys that are 6'3" and much larger than me, and we're like, give us an example of your latest diet. As we're doing, getting ready to work with them, and they're on these carbohydrate levels that are you know lower than my 110-pound bikini competitor, and I'm like, what are you doing? Or these ridiculously high fat intakes because I'm carb sensitive. I'm like, you're not mysteriously getting more energy out of carbs than you are out of fats. You're not from Mars, like it's just not like that. But they don't know that. Like I'm not,
Mhm.
I'm making light of it, but it's unfortunate because of that demonization, let's say, of carbs. That's probably number one. Um, that's definitely number one. Doing
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Pure Payne Show. I'm your host, Isaac Payne, and we're going to discuss health, fitness, and mindset and everything in between. Today, I got a fantastic guest. We go back quite a few years. He's a fitness and nutrition coach who specializes in working with physique and bodybuilding athletes. He's also an accomplished natural bodybuilder himself, a natural bodybuilding champion. He actually introduced me to the whole concept of flexible dieting and counting macros back in 2015 and helped me drop 25 pounds of fat long before counting macros was kind of a mainstream thing. So he's definitely, I would consider him to be the fat loss guru. Whenever I think of the term fat loss, Noel is the guy that comes to mind. So today I have with you guys Noel. Welcome, Lou.
Hey, how are you?
Awesome, buddy. Awesome.
Good.
Yeah, it's been a few years since we've chatted and stuff. So kind of what have you been up to lately?
Still coaching. It's often a bit self-perpetuating because we've coached so many people over the years now that word of mouth is still the number one thing that brings people in. I'm not too big on social media. I probably don't devote nearly the time to it as I should, but we're pretty busy and things are good, helping a lot of people, and it never gets boring. So, you know,
That's awesome, man. I
I
mean, that's the
say,
name of the game. I mean,
yeah,
if you have a strong word of mouth base, you're obviously getting great results for people. So
yeah,
that's fueling the fire. More power to you.
yeah,
That's
man.
awesome, man. What, how did you get started? Like, where did this all start?
Boy, like I was doing a bit of coaching before I entered a partnership with my business partner, Mark Crawford. Before that, it was actually kind of forced on me back in 2010. Because from what I understand, in a certain natural bodybuilding league, I was the first Western Canadian to get a pro card. And I somehow word got out. And it was actually CrossFit folks who approached me first because they're like, "Hey, we hear you're good at this, and that." I'm like, "Sure," for myself. But because I had been coached for years, I'm not somebody who went in blind. I found some of the best coaches kind of before the internet explosion, and they all became, $8,000 US a year to hire. I was fortunately able to get them when they were $500 and working with them for years. So I had experience being coached, and I was like, you know what? If people want to try this, let's do it. And it really didn't take long for more people to come. And it kind of got to a point where locally, I was getting shopped per se with another coach. And that coach, who's Mark, approached me. We happened to train at the same gym and was like, "Hey, what do you think if we partner up?" And in a lot of ways, I'm like, this guy has some strengths that I don't have, and vice versa. We partnered up and it blew up from there. Got a lot more popular after that. He actually forced me to get on Instagram because I
Uh-huh.
just despised it,
Okay.
and he literally forced me into it, and then it really took off. So yeah.
Wow. Why the hesitation with Instagram? I mean, you got the body for it.
Um, I'm just not huge on social media, I guess. And I was already busy because I am in the fitness equipment industry as well. But it's just, I think it's genetic. I stay busy. My mother's the same way, and it's not a workload I can't handle. So eventually it sort of became a bit addicting. And, I liked the people inquiring and I liked the extra business, and it actually got pretty fun. But I think the main thing is I just don't like my picture taken. I don't like me being plastered on things, which is hilarious when you're on Instagram, with people taking 50 selfies and all this stuff. But, I prefer to sure, I'll post a photo of myself for a client, but really my Instagram, which is battling bro science, by the way, if anybody needs to know, but is really more informative. Mine is one of the more informative sites. I'm not going to post said study. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. I'm going to put it a little bit more in layman's terms so people can relate, people understand. But that's really the angle I go with my Instagram, and often, myth busting, because I'll be perusing Instagram and see something that just enrages me that's completely false by some Instagram famous person. And right away, I'm like, that's it. I need to post about this. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
So let's go back just a touch further. When did you start competing in bodybuilding, and how did that become? How did that happen?
I always wanted to. I don't know why. I always was fascinated by lifting weights, this and that. Um, I wanted to go the natural route just because for me it just worked, because the who knows how much stuff I would have to take, and it's a whole other element to the process. And not that I don't, coach people, competitors that use PEDs, and recreational people who use PEDs, whatever. But for myself, it just made more sense. It seems more straightforward to me that I wouldn't have to deal with this other element. I manage my training, my nutrition, my recovery, stay disciplined, and I guess my genetics will let me get to where I get to. So I chose that path. My first real dive into it, we'll say, is 2006. Um, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I won my class. I missed overall, but that's all it took. And then I would compete the next year, 2007. I take the overall. Then I took a few years off, a couple years off, came back in 09, and in a different federation where I won my class. I did not get my pro card, and that fueled the fire. I came back the next year and got my pro card. And then after that, I think it's 17 shows in total
Okay.
since 2006. I usually cluster them together. I don't like to compete every year because, it's just not for me. Can't really improve, and you're kind of in a perpetual state of being quite lean. So when you're really lean, like competitively, not beach body lean, not nice looking lean. We're talking, it's not attractive, really. It's just for the stage. It's miserable, right?
Yeah.
It's tough. So, I'm not into maintaining that all the time. So, I'd rather
Okay.
be healthy lean rather than, emaciated face, and the skin on your butt's like the skin on the back of your hand. That's just, that's hard to maintain, right? So,
Wow. I guess I guess going the natural route, you never wanted to kind of have that freakish physique, be like 240 pounds. You need
yeah.
to be like a
It,
normal size guy.
well, I mean, you look at the IFBB bodybuilding pros today versus, decades ago. They're really large now. To me, there's no aesthetic in there. Even the classic physique, which I prefer the look of, they're quite large. Um, I mean, it'd be cool to walk around like that for a couple days, I guess. But I look at the top, natural pros that I've always looked up to. I see that, and that was always like, that's how I want to look. I like that look, you know. Um, yeah. So really, no, I don't know. It never really was my thing. I never really was tempted.
Yeah.
I have not really. Yeah. I mean, I've done shows against them. I've done some open shows. I've actually won shows where I was probably the only person, not using. Who knows who ever
Yeah.
wasn't. But I've done decent. But I mean, geez, some of these guys are massive. Even in the amateur, what am I going to do against a guy who's my height, who's got 50 pounds on me? Like, really,
Nuts.
but no, I'm not really into the look. And what it takes to do it is, I don't know. It's not really my thing.
No, fair enough. I mean, it's all about long-term health and what
There's
floats your
that.
boat, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, you've got quite the history. I mean, how did you, I mean, you helped when you coached me, you basically taught me the principle of flexible dieting. So how did you come to that philosophy and that approach towards nutrition?
Well, that's my coach was kind of the father of that, actually. A lot of the other natural coaches, especially in the US, kind of come from that, you know, where the big joke is that flexible dieting kind of came out of a guy who was like, I really didn't like carrots. So there's some, what's the word for it? Urban legend. He's like, oh, well, I still lost fat the same. Maybe foods don't really matter. And then he would have a Pop Tart here and there, and treat himself. Oh, everything's still good. And that's kind of the mythology where the idea comes from. But my coach, that it was macros right away. I'll always remember. These are your starting macros based on your data, and you're going to track in a chart similar to what I do. Maybe not quite as nuanced as what I do because, things evolve. The longer you coach, I think I've had over 500 clients by now or so. I'm not, it's got to be, it's a lot.
Mhm.
You learn as you go. Like you learn from your clients as much as they learn from you. And you do realize that although at heart, tracking macros, slash calories sounds simple, the idea is simple. The execution is a little more complicated than that. It's a little more nuanced, right? So that's where I came from. And of course, naturally, I've always been, and probably just because of, when I was going to college, university, the big theme at the time was critical thinking. Learn to be a critical thinker. And as somebody who was taught to think that way, macros just made sense. The physics just made sense. Numbers made sense. You get down to the nitty gritty, and a lot of what people are saying just that doesn't float on the surface. It sort of makes sense, but biochemically, what you're saying doesn't make sense, which is typically what we see on Instagram or these huge YouTube celebrities, touting this or that. Like, oh, make sure you eat whole eggs, not egg whites, because of this. And it's like, no, that's not really. You're just coming up with stuff that sounds marketable.
Yeah.
And to someone like myself, when it comes to approach, when it comes to things being effective, there's no room for marketing. There's no room for glamour. There's no room for any of that stuff. Just raw logic, the proper methods, and then of course, the proper support for that client. So being able to relate to their situation, their goals, their life. Um, Very big on that because I know, and what I explain to a lot of them is like, look, whether you're a competitor, I mean, it's like maybe 15% of my clients are competitors now. It's a lot more lifestyle people, stuff like that. But what I explain to them is, hey, whether you're some day trader who just wants to lose 50 pounds or a guy who wants to hit the stage and win a physique show, the scientific principles, the core are the same. But there's certain, things we have to do for this person's lifestyle versus this other person's lifestyle, what their goals are and things like that. So there might be a little more room to move on another one, maybe less strict on that lifestyle person being able to handle more meals out, family gatherings, stuff like that. So lifestyle is, I'd say, it's actually a lot more nuanced than competitors. Competitors really, sure, when you get into peaking and stuff like that, you have those things to deal with. But with lifestyle people, you tend to have a little bit more problem solving and troubleshooting throughout the process because you have to have it work within their lifestyle. With a competitor, there's a lot less flexibility. So it's going to be a lot more rigid. So with them, there's a lot less forgiveness because, hey, you're going to be naked in front of hundreds of people and judges. So there's not much
Yeah.
negotiation here. You have to just devote yourself for 6 months to be your best if you want to feel good about yourself. Because ultimately, your placing's your placing. You don't know who's going to show up, but you want to be able to say, you know what, I gave it my all. I don't have to feel bad about anything. So I'm happy about what I brought to the stage.
Well, very
It's a long
interesting.
answer to your question.
No, it's great.
Yeah,
Now, do you find when you're working with just average Joe, like for me, I know I'm not average, but I'm
not
not a
average. No.
competitor. So I understand the general principles of nutrition. I understand macros. So
Yeah.
when you were coaching me, you basically gave me three numbers: protein, carbs, and fats. Hit these numbers on a regular basis, and the results will take care of themselves. So it's pretty easy in theory. But do you find it's difficult for the average Joe to count macros and to actually
Um,
follow through?
you know what? Less so now than it used to be.
Okay.
Because I mean, 50% of people who sign up have had some exposure to, let's say, MyFitnessPal, or they've tried some trendy diet that had some half-assed sort of measuring going on, or some sort of, I don't want to use the word manipulation, but food control. So a vegan, I get a lot of vegans. Well, vegans have had to take responsibility for how they eat quite a bit. So with them, they understand food a little bit more because of that. You have more vegetarians these days. Same thing. They've had to look at what they eat. They had to analyze what they eat. So believe it or not, and those aren't trendy diets, but then you have the more trendy things that have happened, everything from paleo, keto, which just won't go away, whatever. But all these people have had to manage their diets to some degree. So they kind of have their foot in the door a little bit with how to track and understanding protein, carbs, and fats. I get less people these days that are like, I don't even know what protein, carbs, and fats are. I get a lot less of that these days.
Okay. Okay.
So, Yeah, I'd say it's actually a little bit easier. People come in with a little knowledge now. And one of the things that I can help people feel comfortable is I will have people come to me and says, "Hey, I saw your post and I did do that keto thing. I'm kind of embarrassed. It was kind of a wash in the end. I gained it all back. I'm wearing this." I'm like, "Hey, it was actually a positive thing." They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "You have experience with food and what it is outside of just putting it in your mouth. Like you understand food a little bit more." "Oh, okay." And these people typically do amazing.
Mhm.
So, in a sense, a lot of these trends and these things that people have tried to actually have made things much easier for
Mhm.
Mark and I coaching people. So now, someone like yourself, you definitely wouldn't be on that spectrum where they know nothing. You had a pretty good base of knowledge, so of course it fit for you very quickly. When I do have somebody who's really green, we have ways to kind of integrate, the methods, slowly, step by step. It's not with someone like that. I might not necessarily be like, here's your macros to start, here's your chart, here's this. You're going to have kind of a graded system to get them into there, right? And that's also why if somebody says, you do get people who've never competed before. Let's say somebody wants to compete, whether it be, I mean, we get a lot of bikini clients now, like bikini, physique, bodybuilding, whatever, and they have never had any experience with any of this. A lot of times, like, hey, why don't you work with us for a few months and learn the skills? I'm not saying you're not going to progress during that time. You will, but you want to learn those skills because knowing your food, tracking it may sound to some really complicated. It's not, but to some it sounds really easy, but it is one of those things you got to practice, you know, like almost anything, like Olympic lifts. You got to practice. You're
Yeah.
going to get good at them. Believe it or not, tracking is a bit of a skill too. Some people are even better than I am. And I've been tracking since 2007, actually, before the smartphones. So,
Wow.
oh no, say 2006, you know, whereas I do have clients who are probably even better, more macro wizards than I am. Like, they have this trick and that trick, and I've got a plan like this, that, and it just blows me away. I'd say Mark is probably that guy can, you know, eat one time in a day or 10 and he'll hit it. No confusion, no nothing. You have someone like me, no, I gotta eat 4 times a day. That's how it works. I gotta eat it these times. That's how it works. It's the only way I'll stick with it. So it's gonna vary from person to person. But again, the core is, the total calories, your macro ratios, how active the person is, including their total steps per day, their job, how active is their job, how much weight training they're going to do. There's all these factors. And that's why, you can't just use some macro calculator. And rarely does that work for anybody because there's so many factors that we have to deal with that individual. So once we have those factors, and then of course the person's personality and lifestyle, we just do our best to kind of guide them, week after week towards whatever goal that they have.
No, it's very good, man. It's awesome. There's
Sorry,
so
my
many
cat's
little,
attacking me here.
yeah, I mean, no, it's great. I mean, there's so many little details and I'm learning so much. It's great that I'm having this chance to really pick your brain. Now, I got a couple of questions. I guess one, what do you think is the biggest or some of the biggest mistakes the general public make? People that don't necessarily come to you, they're just in general public make when it comes to fat loss. Like, what are some of the biggest mistakes average Joe out there is making that's causing them to just carry extra fat?
Okay. Um, you can look at it at two ways. One, you can look at what their actual, like mechanisms they're doing incorrectly. And the second is their mindset. So I'll go over mindset first. Generally, it's impatience. People trying to be like, well, I want to just nail it out of the gate, lose 30 pounds the first month. I'm like, what? You know, you will basically not have to eat. And you and I both know you're just going to slingshot your weight back up after that. So that's one. Not realizing that losing, let's say, 1% of your total body weight a week is actually a really good rate. They just, getting their minds around that. So that's part of the mindset. You want a realistic mindset of, hey, I'm going to lose, let's say around 1% total body weight. That's zero point 0.5 to 1.5 tends to be kind of the range. And there's many factors into what that range would be, but that's a whole other discussion. So that mindset, zero patience, looking for quick fixes, skipping from diet trend to diet trend. Um, that's huge. That's probably the biggest one,
Yeah.
actually. Because once there's countless clients, their big thing when they look back at their journey is, I don't know why I didn't do this before. I look back like I don't, wow. And it's like, but there was nothing glamorous about what we did. There
Right.
was no, oh, drink apple cider vinegar every morning. Don't eat after 7 o'clock. There was none of that crap, you know? So Now, in kind of the mechanisms that people do wrong, typically when people want to get into tracking or whatever, super low carb is the number one thing we see. You know, guys that are 6'3" and much larger than me, and we're like, give us an example of your latest diet. As we're doing, getting ready to work with them, and they're on these carbohydrate levels that are you know lower than my 110-pound bikini competitor, and I'm like, what are you doing? Or these ridiculously high fat intakes because I'm carb sensitive. I'm like, you're not mysteriously getting more energy out of carbs than you are out of fats. You're not from Mars, like it's just not like that. But they don't know that. Like I'm not,
Mhm.
I'm making light of it, but it's unfortunate because of that demonization, let's say, of carbs. That's probably number one. Um, that's definitely number one. Doing really kind of illogical restrictions. Oh, I can't eat bread. Oh, I heard potatoes make you fat. When in fact, potatoes are the most filling food you can have. They're actually a fantastic diet food.
Yeah.
Depriving themselves of anything that they like. So then they snap on Saturdays and Sundays and go nuts. That's actually the most common thing we see. Sorry, people that are good Monday to Friday and
Yeah.
garbage over the weekend, and they never get anywhere. And the cycle repeats year after year. Before you know it, they're in their 40s and they're like, it's harder to lose weight now. It may be, and that's okay. Not that they can't, but you got some bad habits now. Um, but those are typically the things I would see wrong. Like, when you get to the nitty gritty of what they're doing. So food elimination, ultra low carb, ridiculously high protein. I've seen that too, where I'm like, geez, like, okay. Um, so yeah, and overall very low intake right out of the gate. That's another one where I'm like, you
Mhm.
don't need to cut nearly that much.
Right.
And the typical response will be, but that's what I do or nothing happens. Well, hold on. No, that's because you did that for 4 or 5 days and then you ate 5,000 calories on Saturday. So you just think you weren't getting anywhere. You really were. You probably could have, had 500 calories more a day, Monday to Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and lost 2 pounds of fat that week. Oh,
Yeah.
geez, you repeat that 10 times. Well,
Yeah.
there's 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of sums it up.
Oh, that's yeah. It's sounds like a lot of the clients I've had in the past. Just that yin yang, looking for the quick fix,
Yeah.
and then very extreme, going too low, too fast, and just yeah, all over the place, just roller coaster, um, crazy,
Up and
crazy.
down. Yeah.
Yeah,
And to be fair about the quick fix thing, if you really think about it, tracking, being active, and what I mean by tracking is your food intake, kind of is a quick fix because after, 4, 5, 6 months isn't a long time. And
Mhm.
you can go from a little bit tubby to six packed out in 6 months. That's kind of a quick fix.
Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't 2 months like, you know, Woman's World magazine told you,
yeah,
but that's pretty fast. 6 months isn't a long time. It'll be here before you know it. So,
yeah. In the grand scheme of things, for sure. I mean, if you get that ultimate goal, yeah, it is. It is definitely. But I guess the average person, they want it now, like literally now.
they want it now. Yeah.
That's the problem. Now, you've helped a lot of people get tremendous results, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm certain there's a lot of people, or not a lot, but a certain percentage that didn't get results.
Sure.
Why do you think those people failed?
You know what? I actually had a conversation recently with a new recruit, I guess I could call them. They asked, "What do your successful clients do?" Now, the beautiful thing is the majority of our clients actually get some pretty good progress, which is fantastic. I'm very proud of that. I love it. Makes me happy. Those who do not don't do these things, which is what I explained to this client. They don't check in. So we give people a check-in date, usually once a week. Competitors, sometimes we're jerks and we give them 2 or 3 times a week because things get hard. We need to be there. They check in, weekly check-in. Those who don't succeed typically don't check in. They just don't. Well, I had nothing to check in with. That's okay. Hey guys, sorry, my chart's not filled out. I had this busy week, relative got sick, whatever. Let us know. Keep that communication open. That's one. Lack of preparing. Okay. You know what? I love flexible dieting, or responsible dieting is a term I've used and some other coaches have used. Um, but it still requires a bit of planning. It's not for everybody. Some people are incredible. My business partner, Mark, that guy does not need planning. He'll get it done.
Mm.
Someone like me, I need it. Majority of clients, I would say, do. So lack of, maybe prepping 2 or 3 days worth of your staple foods. They won't do that. they're going to rely always on eating outside the home, not preparing any other food. That's a big one, big pitfall. People who think they can do it completely eating outside the home, some people can, but unless you're sticking to just simple food franchises like McDonald's, Wendy's, which you probably will not, where you got all that macronutrient information, it's going to be tough because typically restaurant foods are laced with much more fat than you think. That's why it's so delicious. So lack of preparedness, not checking in. Those are the two big things that are pretty much universal in those who don't get good results. The thing is tracking, your diet and your physical activity and getting enough sleep. These are all metrics we can work with. We are human beings. The laws of physics always apply. If you are doing things 90%, you should be progressing. If you are not, odds are you're dipping, which is, oh, I took a handful of Skittles that day on top of my macros. Oh, I ate a couple of my son's chips. He was having chips. Oh, this, and that. It's typically going to be that. It's not going to be missed workout sessions. If you only train twice at your CrossFit box this week, not 3 or 4, hey, it's not going to make too much of a difference to your fat loss goal. You follow what I'm saying? It's typically being a bit too fast and loose with your diet. Some people can eyeball and still track reasonably. We definitely have clients that are freaking experts at that. The last email I sent before this our conversation here was exactly that. This person amazes me. Like, oh, I had to do this, then I had to travel here. Then I'm like, you still did a decent job. Whereas you got me tracking since 2006. My ability to eyeball is piss poor. If you took my scale away, and I'm sure a lot of my clients do this, and I try to wing it like a lot of them do that don't succeed. Oh, no, I'll gain 2-3 pounds every week and claim I underate. So that's another one. Oh, I swear I was under all week. Physics say otherwise. And I get it. It takes practice. So typically it'll be that, just not, being loosey goosey, not checking in. That's probably the two biggest ones, or they're too hard on themselves. Sometimes you don't get much progress your first couple of weeks because you're just learning how to track. Just too hard on themselves, then they give up. And it's like, well, even though you physically, let's say, didn't lose an ounce of fat, you are still progressing because you're getting better at said skill. Those habits, those skills, and that positive mentality are all progress. They're all tools that are going to help you get to where you want to get. I am not always motivated when, I get lean for a bodybuilding show. I was maybe motivated a handful of days. It's hard. But because I've got the habits, I just eat at the same times every day because I've prepared food. These habits, it's like automatic. It's just automatic. It's like walking. Yeah. So every day I'm taking steps forward, regardless of motivation. Motivation's highly overrated. But those habits and those skills are still progress. People got to understand that the sheer fat loss, it'll come. When you got those skills down, it'll come. It has to. It's just, it is what it is. It's like gravity. It just is. You just got to work on those skills, and some people get them right off the bat, more so these days, right? Based on our last question, I definitely see more of it these days because people have had exposure to MyFitnessPal, Calorie King, whatever. But still, there's a lot of people where there's going to be 2-3 weeks of, kind of learning it. Just don't give up then. It gets much easier. So there you go.
I'm with you there on the winging it. I try to wing it and I end up just eating twice the amount of food I should. It's just like, I can't. I have to weigh and measure if I want to eat the appropriate amount of food. There's no way.
Just a note on that. There is research into, eyeballing food. Typically people report half of what they actually ate. Half. Okay.
Wow.
So, and one of these studies was in England with women, obese women in the UK. And when they tracked them versus when they did not. So they follow them around with the camera. I don't really remember the methodology, but it was about half. So these women were like, oh, I think I'm only eating, I'd do this in a British accent if I could, because it'd be funny. But, I'm only eating 2,000 calories a day. We're in fact eating 4,000. Guess what happens? Most women eating 4,000 calories a day who don't exercise. They're going to, So you're like I am, and don't get me wrong. A lot of our clients after working with us can wing a lot of their meals and still do it. Yeah. Some people have a knack for it.
No,
I do not. No. You do not. But a lot of our clients do, and they learn it with tracking. The more you track, for most people, they'll get to their summer because you can't bring your scale everywhere. Let's be realistic.
No. Yeah.
You go to your friend's wedding, you go out for dinner. but did you pre-plan what you're going to eat? You looked at the menu online before you went, so you kind of knew what you were going to eat, stuff like that you can do. But you won't always have your scale with you. That's just part of learning. But
Yeah.
the more you've tracked, looked at foods, the better you are at winging it. But again, I'm only so good and will only do it when I have to. So when I'm not in the house, but when I'm in the house or I'm bringing my meals with me, they are tracked.
Oh, fair enough. So what would you say? You touched on a few topics there, a few little things that kind of annoy you. What do you say? What are some of your major pet peeves in the fitness industry?
Oh,
I'm opening a can of worms, I know, but
we could, and people who know me, they know me. I could rant. They tell me I should open up a YouTube channel, just going and, ranting about it.
yeah,
We live in a world where the person that has influence on us isn't necessarily the movie star, isn't necessarily, the musician. It's the Instagram celebrity. And let me tell you that, you know, 500K follower booty band workout girl with this incredible physique did not build it with bands. She did not. She built it with hard training, usually fantastic genetics. When you've been doing this as long as I have, you can actually look at people's muscle bellies and you're like, oh, well, the reason her glutes are so good is because her glute insertion is about 3 inches lower than the average person. That's why her glute, it doesn't matter what she does. She could walk upstairs probably and she'd have great glutes. So you get these beautiful people with these massive followings. Of course, they're not going to preach logical sound coaching. It's not sexy to market it. What I coach is just not marketable, really. To a big degree, it's not. So of course, that's my biggest pet peeve is 500K followers. Yeah, I'll buy this booty band program for $20, and I've seen them clients send me their stuff, and I see I'm like, oh my god, what a waste of $20. You know, that is my primary thing on social media, or sorry, in the fitness industry. But just because social media is so prevalent and is such a massive factor, would be that. And what hurts me about it is just people being taken advantage of. Like it's just you want to wring their neck and be like, oh, why? So that would be number one. Two would be very well educated people. One of the things that gets to me big time is you have, I think, a moral obligation to give people solid, proper information. If you have a PhD and you're touting apple cider vinegar to people to lose belly fat, can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. You're not a good person. So you really shouldn't be doing that. And that would be the second one is highly educated people. And maybe because they're highly educated, they're good at manipulating the masses. I don't know, but that is definitely something that gets to me. Telling people things like calories don't matter. Okay. It's just, it's thermodynamics, like, yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into fat loss, but that's a very big one, you know? So yeah, that's another one right there. So trends that are kind of made up by people. We live in a very fast world now, fast information, not necessarily always good, but we live in a fast information age and it's never going to change. So people just need to be aware of it. Typically, I don't run into too much of that. People who come to me are like, I've been perusing your Instagram for a couple weeks, or my friend, I've been talking to my friend who's been coached by you, and it just makes sense. And then I see what happens with them or whatever, and of course, I still got to do some myth busting for them. Um, but a lot of that myth busting is just stuff that they've just had forced down their throat by, again, people who are fit, who are photogenic, who have these incredible Instagrams that they have professionals helping themselves with, who, if you hire them as your coach, they're not your coach, by the way. They have, some people in the background who are doing it all for them. That would be it, really. It's just that touting a misinformation under brilliant marketing is my pet peeve, because to me, we're not selling clothes. We're not selling fashion. We're actually doing something that could really help people be healthier, feel better about themselves and what they've accomplished. And when that's kind of, you know, being, polluted by that, that mass marketing and, making up half-ass theories about why you can't lose weight and all this kind of stuff, it just seems dirty and underhanded. And I'm not a fan of it.
no,
And
I
I
mean,
did that without swearing. So that's good. Yeah.
no, it's all good, man. I mean, everything you're saying, I'm on board with you because I know social media, mass marketing, there's a lot of power and influence there, and people are getting the wool pulled over them
Oh yeah.
way, way too much. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate, right? Because no one wants to hear that, just doing the basic, yet hard, but it's basic work and being consistent is what gets the best results.
Of course.
Just nobody wants to hear that. Everyone's looking for a hack or some shortcut, some way to just get there without actually doing the fundamental things.
That's yes, because that's going to handle about 80, 90% of what's going to happen. What, your results really.
Now, do you find that do you get a lot of people that have come to you and they've basically tried everything and they're like, okay, I guess I'll track my food, or I guess I'll do this now because such and such diet just didn't work. I lost 20 pounds and I put back 30. So I
Yeah.
guess I'll try Lou out and see what he's all about. Do you get a lot of people like that?
That's about half.
They've done
It's
their done
well,
one
okay. I'm
round.
being I'm being facetious, but it's a lot of people. But I
Yeah.
love those people,
Mm,
right? I love it because it's like an epiphany now, you know. Um, and they've been through the ringer. They've tried all types of fasting protocols, which actually is a tool to help people adhere to their macros, by the way, as an aside about, fasting. But they've tried all these fasting things and it just, didn't really work. And they've tried all these big trendy diets. They've bought countless ebooks, countless, coaches online who are, again, just either IFBB pros or just beautiful booty girl, this or that, you
right.
know. So in a way, it's nice because they've come full circle and I'm like, okay, now I'm so confused though that even an approach that's more basic, fundamental, is confusing. I don't know how to execute it. And oftentimes these people, they actually have the knowledge. So it's just like a puzzle that you put into a box and you shook the hell out of it. All the information is in there. They just need somebody to put it together for them.
Yeah, yeah.
And no, they come around quite well generally, you know. And we live in a busy world too. So often those people are just thankful that they're like, I followed your directive. I took all that mental stress off losing weight because people really stress themselves out about losing weight and they will place a lot of their self worth on it and all these things. And it's painful to see. And what's nice when you get them on the right path is now you can concentrate on life. You can concentrate on your work, your relationships, your kids, and just know that, yeah, I'm going to succeed just because, I got this down. I made sure this was ready and my food intake was proper and I got in my steps today and I'm going to the gym tomorrow. I don't even have to stress because it's on automatic. And there's actually a coach, which I'm sure a lot of people heard of, Eric Helms, who's one of my favorites. And he kind of put it that way that I don't have to think about my contest prep. And this is contest prep, which is more extreme. I don't even have to think about it because I just execute the numbers. Then I life. I do. I'm not sure what he exactly said, but basically what he was trying to convey is then I can concentrate on life. Your diet and fitness, even though we enjoy it and I enjoy it and I'm immersed in the culture, there are other things in my life too. I don't want to always be thinking about my training and nutrition. I want to do other things. Now, most people aren't as committed to fitness as we are because it's not necessarily what they do for a living. You want to de-stress all that. They know they're progressing because they're following that protocol and they're learning, but they can devote psychic energy, their mental energy to, family, friends, and just life in general. That's a very powerful thing, you know. Ultimately, that's what we want.
Yeah, no, it makes sense for sure. I mean, the more you can automate it, the less stressful and the
Yeah,
better
that's a
the
good way to say it. Yeah.
results. No,
Yeah.
it's awesome. Now, you've been doing this a long time, a lot of experience, a lot of trial and error, I'm sure. Is there anything that you believe in now or that you didn't believe in 10 years ago or vice versa? Are the things that you're doing with clients that you weren't before or vice versa? You're not doing anymore that you used to do.
Yeah. You know what? At the core, of course, the idea of energy intake, and expenditure, that's always there. But how it's executed, of course, that's changed a little bit. You know, there's been a little bit more. I think the word is being specific to the given client. So when I got into this, things were probably a little bit more, how I would relate to the client, how I would plan either high intake days or high carb days or whatnot. would be much different now than back then. Then maybe I had two or three methods of getting it across to a client. Now I have many. So definitely that experience has, there's been a lot of changes in how to help a client succeed. So how to put things together that make sense for them, how to tailor your coaching approach to people's personalities. It's incredible. You have all these different groups of personalities, but now that you've dealt with enough people, oh, that's how I deal with client A here. I know the type you are. You're like this. Awesome. We can get this message across to you. Then, oh, here's client B. He's a numbers guy. He's this and this. Okay, that's how we're going to do this. Yeah, if you follow where I'm going, the principles, the actual science behind it, a little bit, of course, always learning. Um, I'm a nerd, so I still, there's a few sources out there that I love to still, dive into whatever the latest is and educate myself, whether it be, some new studies or, one of the big guys in the industry, from the science side of it who helps conduct these studies to I'll buy the latest edition of Muscular Hypertrophy and I'm going to read that. I believe I got the name right by Brad Schoenfeld, whatever. So I still get stimulated off being educated. And you sometimes grab some grains of knowledge there where you're like, I can apply this to my clients. The biggest change is because I do a lot of strength coaching. I'd say that's almost half of what we do. That is advanced for sure. How we look at training volume, frequency, intensity, all that has changed a great deal, has definitely evolved. So that's been awesome. So in there, yeah, you'll get some things that change because it's a little less clear cut than diet. Um, but with diet is mainly applying that science to different types of people and lifestyle. That's what's changed the most. It felt a lot more hard to problem solve for people in the past. Now it's much smoother and much more effective. So, but as far as like an actual like scientific fact or something really, yeah, not so much. Not really.
Okay.
No. Maybe with peak weeks, okay, with that, yes. With competitors, yes. That sometimes certain methods work differently, but generally for people that hasn't changed too
Okay. Well, that's good to know. At least you know that the principles will always hold true and be timeless, right? For the
much.
most part. So people
Well,
get
yeah,
results.
it's physics,
Yeah.
really. Like it's just science. And you really hope that doesn't change too much. Uh,
No, awesome. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna say a few buzzwords, and I'm just gonna let you just talk, give me your opinions, thoughts, feelings, whatever comes to your mind
okay.
instantly when I say the words.
Okay.
Let me know how you feel. Meal timing and frequency.
Useful, not a magic bullet.
Okay. Why?
Can help control appetite, help people stick to their numbers. If they're lean enough, can play a small role in recovery.
Okay. Fair enough. Uh, you're gonna love this one. Keto.
Science shows there's no performance enhancing effects over a regular balanced diet with the same calorie deficit, especially when protein levels are equated. As a matter of fact, there's some science showing it's less effective for recovery and performance than at equal calories, but a diet that has carbohydrates in it. So unnecessarily difficult, slightly less effective overall. There
Now,
you go. And
why
expensive.
why all the buzz with keto then? Why is everyone on this keto train?
Well, everything is up. You know what? The fitness and nutrition industry is much like fashion, ups and downs. Bell bottoms, I guess, will come back at some point.
Okay.
Neon colors come back some point. Like it's a bit like that because people feel defeated trying one thing and now they're trying another. That's usually what's going to bring these things back. Look, keto works. Why? You're in a calorie deficit. Simple. Just like a balanced diet in a calorie deficit. Simple. But it gives people like a scapegoat. Keto gives people this fantastic scapegoat called carbohydrates slash sugar. So I just get rid of those and I'll lose weight. It's like, okay, well, sure, if you're in a calorie deficit, but now that you've eliminated 1/3 of you know, the macronutrients you eat, it's not as balanced an approach, not as sustainable. People end up buying these prepackaged keto foods that are 4 times as expensive. Like, no, it's unnecessarily difficult. Um, but at best, it would be equal. But again, from a performance standpoint, research is starting to come out to be like, oh, wait a minute. Actually, people on keto don't perform as well on the same calorie deficit as somebody in a balanced diet. Well, that's enough to convince someone like me. I'm not going to pick an approach that's going to make me less effective in the gym. Hell no. So, one inherent thing it does do that attracts some people is they start keto and they have an all of a sudden big drop in weight. Well, that drop in weight is not body fat, it's glycogen. So essentially, it's water storage in your muscles. Okay, so you dropped a rapid 5 to 10 pounds, but now your muscles are all flat and you're tired. You feel like garbage and your training isn't very good. That just doesn't, that's not a fair trade off. I want my muscles to look good and be full, you know? But I think a lot of people who maybe they have enough body fat, they can't tell their muscles have gone flat. They just love seeing that 10 pounds drop off the scale in a week or two. They love it. But none of that, very little of that was fat, unfortunately.
What about all this talk about the mental acuity with the ketones and everything? Your mind is sharper. What's that all
Yeah, the placebo effect is powerful
about?
because research would actually show they're incorrect, right? Your brain's primary fuel is glucose, after all. At best, it might be equal for some people, but again, placebo is very powerful, and studies have proved this time and time again. A lot of the time, what makes people feel good about going into a new diet is now they have a focus. They have something to do to identify with and devote energy with. This empowers people, whether it be keto or whatever, it empowers people. So of course they're going to say that. When paleo was big, everybody would say the same thing. Oh, I just feel more energetic now. I'm like, well, no, it's because you're actually managing what you eat. You're probably sleeping better. You're part of the CrossFit culture. So you're just healthier now. Of course you feel better. You know what I mean? So there's that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's kind of a good way to say it, I guess.
Okay. Intermittent fasting.
Very useful tool for some, not a magic solution.
Why?
Well, let's say we'll take person A
Yeah.
and we got a clone of this person. 2,000 calories is a 500 calorie deficit. I'm just picking numbers here, okay? So they're both on 2,000 calories. One of them does it through intermittent fasting, the other one does it 4 meals a day. Their rate of fat loss will be virtually identical, okay? The faster will not lose fat more. All right. However, if we find that the guy who's not intermittent fasting just can't adhere to those 4 meals and he's dipping and cheating, oh, well, now the calories aren't equated and his diet's not as successful. But his twin, his clone, I should say clone, because a twin isn't actually 100% the same genes. I found that out recently. But anyway, um, you know, but they can adhere because of that lifestyle change, which is what intermittent fasting is. Then their approach is superior because they can adhere because they have that intermittent fasting method. Okay. But when calories are equated, there will be no advantage with intermittent fasting. Now, in light of latest research, they are finding that extended fasts do decrease protein synthesis overall and performance. And these are people who do the full day fasts and stuff like that, which is a trend, by the way, really perpetuated. Oh, MLMs, they drive me nuts. Going back to earlier, by a lot of MLM people, we do this fast, and all we take is our vitamin drink for the next day or two, and I'm like, oh, this is horrendous. They are hamstringing um, their recovery and their ability to be excellent. So with intermittent fasting, it works a lot for some people's lifestyle. You got these people who I just can't eat during the day. I just can't. My life is too busy. Cool. And intermittent fasting will be fine. Plenty of my clients do it. Plenty of my clients intermittent fast. Plenty of them are vegans. Plenty of them are vegetarians. The universal truth is they're all hitting their ascribed macros, right? Now, if I have somebody who's getting very lean, sub 10%, wants to look ripped, whether they're competing or they just want to photo shoot, whatever, you will technically recover faster eating about 4 hours apart. You will, it was something like 25%. It's really hard for me to remember, but studies have demonstrated it's about 25% better protein synthesis. Doesn't sound like a lot. It's a lot. So if I have a guy who's a competitor getting lean who's intermittent fasting, then I might be like, hey, you might want to stop doing that because it's going to really hamstring your recovery. Because here you are training hard and in a severe calorie deficit, and beyond all of it, you're shredded. So your ability to bounce back isn't very fast. There you go.
Fasted cardio.
The trend that won't go away. It will not go away. Perpetuated by bikini girls everywhere. What can I say? Not proven to be more effective overall versus post breakfast cardio or whatever the hell it is. It does not matter. I Now there's some evidence to show that doing cardio fasted, you may not be as energetic in that given cardio session. That to me is a minus. Okay. How much? It depends. How long is your cardio session? How intense is it? There's so many factors. It's all context. But overall, I would sum it up to just being no more effective. And if it fits your lifestyle, though, sure. But it's not a magic solution. You hitting the stepper with a band around your knees and kicking back on every step up that stepping machine, intermittent fasting, or doing fasted cardio, you're not getting leaner than the next person who's, eating the same amount of calories as you and everything else is the same. You're not. You're just, yeah.
Okay. Artificial sweeteners.
You know what? They are back in the media getting a bad rap. And what I mean by media is Instagram. Here's the thing. Research that's demonstrated a negative effect, let's say from aspartame, it's been demonstrated, but the amount is incredible. I actually sat down and did the math, and for a 150 pound person, I believe it was 126 cans of Diet Coke a day. I don't know anybody who drinks 126 Diet Coke cans a day. The most diet pop drinking I've ever seen is my business partner, Mark, during contest prep, who will drink, I don't know, it's like 10 cans a day. He's done that before and he's fine. But artificial sweeteners, I think, just stems from that part of our brain that thinks that it's too good to be true. Nothing can taste like sugar and not be bad like sugar. So when you hear statements like, oh, they cause you to gain body fat, no, they don't. No, they don't. And they've done controlled studies to try and demonstrate it, and it doesn't happen. So there's that argument. It's out. It causes people to binge. Again, studies have shown that it does not. Now, do I recommend you eat a crap ton of sweetener? Probably not. But I mean, it's perfectly fine. And it really helps a lot of people. The amount of clients where they discover Diet Mountain Dew or Diet Pepsi because it's way better than Coke. And I am going to stand by this. Diet Coke is trash. But and they discovered, I'm like, my God, my whole life changed. Because I was always told they make you gain weight. Well, they obviously don't, because you're losing weight every week. But it has made it so they could adhere to their diet now because they satisfy that sweet tooth. I have one like with dinner. I always have a can of whatever. We have some nice exotic ones, as we call them, from the States right now. Like, just looking at it across the room, they're like Dr. Pepper cream soda diet. That's awesome. If that keeps me from ordering pizza, at 2 a.m. and eating a whole pizza and crying myself to sleep, so be it. So, yeah, unfortunately, the negativity you get about artificial sweeteners that's just propagated out there has no scientific footing. It really doesn't. It just does not, so that's really the end of it. Enjoy foods without it as much as you want. But if putting, a gram of Splenda in your coffee keeps you from putting a bunch of sugar and stuff and cream in it, more power to you. That's awesome. If you need that can of pop at the end of the day, fantastic. I think I've only seen one person I've ever worked with where I'm like, whoa, you need to hold off on that Splenda. That's ridiculous. And to this day, I swear it's a typo, and they say it's not. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a lot. But yeah, eh, eh, again, just it sounds good to attack it. It's easy to attack it. Fantastic. When people hear, well, because it's sweet, it causes you to release insulin and that makes you store fat. No, it doesn't make you release insulin. Zero. No, it does not. So your whole thing just doesn't make sense. It sounds good though. It does. And people will eat it up because it sounds good and they don't know. They're not in the trenches like we are, in the fitness industry, and their ears are open and they're going to take in some bad info if it gets thrown at them.
No, fair enough. Cheat meals.
Yes. The infamous cheat meal. Responsible for destroying many people's diet efforts.
Should there be any? If so, how many? When? What? Like how often?
Yeah, that one's very, context. Context is everything. I'm a big advocate of controlled higher intake days
Okay.
because, you know, a cheat meal traditionally ends up like giving a 4-year-old dynamite. Like it's dangerous. I've monitored myself, okay, where and just for the hell of it, and realized that I had eaten, I think it was like 1,400 calories in 11 minutes with a jar of peanut butter. And I forget what it was. I'd throw the piece of chocolate in there and then I'd scoop it out. And I measured the thing after to see how much peanut butter I had in that like 10, 11 minutes. It was like 1,400 calories. So that's a cheat meal. That's 1,400 calories. It did not fill me up. It did nothing, but I thought it was funny just to see how I would eat.
Yeah.
So unregulated. I'm not going to go into the terminology. I know people, well, cheat, the word has a negative connotation. I'm not getting into that. Guys, we're adults here. Like,
Yeah. Absolutely.
but regulated cheat meal does tend to work better. Yesterday, I had what's it called? Triple O's, triple O burger and fries. Love it. People, what? How? How can you just eat that? Well, because I tracked it. Um, Generally, clients will have higher intake days. Whether they're mapped out entirely with protein, carb, and fat is one method. Typically, what we're going to do with competitors, because well, they should probably stay within macro ranges because they need that control. You give them a license to cheat a little more loosely, it can be very dangerous when someone's very lean. For other people, I'll be like, hey, your cheat day, whatever. You get to eat 3,000 calories that day. So it's a flex day, or whatever way you want to call it. We just call them high intake days. That's how we would tell them to do their cheat meal. I'm like, oh, that was great. I had 3,000 calories on Saturday. I was able to fit in, 6 slices of pizza at the end of the night. Awesome. You know, but it's tracked and it's easy to monitor. Untracked cheat days are a disaster. So many clients have been, like we were talking about earlier, everything's good until that weekend where they go nuts. And people eat a lot. You can eat 5,000 calories unregulated really easily.
Yeah.
Even a small woman can do it. It's not hard to do. You add drinks in there,
Yeah.
dessert, and a lot of fatty food. It's a joke. You can do it
Yeah.
very easily.
Wow.
So there you go.
Okay. You've been tracking and been very disciplined and with your diet and training for a number of years. Now, do you find that because you've been so disciplined, you can eat more food as you've got throughout the years, like versus 10 years ago? Like, is your daily intake higher now than it was 10 years ago, given your body weight
Yes and
on
no.
average?
Your intake is a moving target. So right now, no, because I move around a bit less.
Okay.
Um, Last time, like right now, I'm doing a mini cut. I have one more week of it because I was essentially in a surplus there for over a year. Wanted to test a few lifts, set some PRs. So, I get to a body weight that I don't really like aesthetically. So now I'm trying to pull it back. But I look at the macros I have to eat to do it. It's less than the last time I dieted.
Okay.
Why? I'm moving around less. I'm stuck behind the computer more. That's going to be the primary factor. Some people will feel ever since I started tracking, I eat so much. A lot of it is the food choices they pick. If they're eating things like, boiled potatoes and lots of fruits and veggies, it's a lot of food volume. Because now that they've taken responsibility over their diet, a lot of flexible dieters actually eat quite quote unquote clean, but they throw treats in there like, oh, I want a Mars bar today. That's really not a lot of your total calories. So most of the food they eat is, you know, whole foods that displace a lot in your stomach, a lot of volume. So they're going to feel like they're eating quite a bit. As far as people, jacking up their metabolism, just terms that people throw out there, it's not so simple because if you were jacking up your metabolism, your metabolic rate, you'd have you'd be running a fever. When you have a fever of 101, 102, you are burning energy like nobody's business. Now, if you could do that consciously when you're dieting, you're probably just going to shorten your lifespan and die. I really don't know what would happen, but what I'm getting at is your actual metabolic rate changing. Sure, adding a bit of muscle makes a bit of a difference, but the primary thing that's going to affect how much you eat is the size of the person. That's primary. Okay. So the reason, like I said, just the sheer size of the person to move them around. I throw a 50-pound weight vest on you for the next 3 weeks, you're going to burn a lot of calories, because now you're effectively a much bigger body. And of course, just the cellular processes that happen with a larger body. It is what it is. So some people will find they do eat more once they get into the fitness journey because hey, now they're training consistently 3, 4, 5 times a week. Now they're conscious of their step count in their phone. So, you know, because of that, they they take more steps because they're trying to always hit that 10,000, for example. So they're just living an active life. Active people eat more. you know um there's so many things that you could factor into how much intake. Your personality, I tend to be pretty high energy, I'm pretty animated. That makes me burn more calories. I pace when I brush my teeth. All that stuff adds up. A calm or introverted type of personality just going to expend less calories in general. So when people go, oh, I have a slow metabolism, I'm like, no, usually it's just you don't move enough. That's all. That's very rare that you have it's extremely rare to have some metabolic deficiency. Could be your thyroid, something like that. But generally, it's just lifestyle. That is the biggest thing. You know, how much you walk, how much you move, your breathing rate. You move around when you sit down. You know what I mean? That's huge. So I don't think that your ability is a little bit elastic, but not quite as much as people think. So for me, I'd say it's about the same. It's totally based on how much I move around, what I do.
Very interesting. A couple more questions. Protein. We didn't touch on protein. There's always so much ambiguity.
Yeah.
How much protein should a person be eating to be healthy and to be lean? What's your general prescription?
I mean, when we look at, yeah, the old 1 gram per pound of lean body mass, it's a pretty good amount.
Okay. So that
That's
is true.
probably enough.
You don't need
Yeah. Some factors, as you get older, you need more.
that. Okay.
To get similar protein synthesis response, you do need more. It actually flexes by a fair deal once people get over about 50. So you'd want to be a little more conscious of your protein intake then. But if I'm coaching a guy who's 22 years old, you know, his body's very efficient with the protein he takes in. So what's going to be factored in there is, of course, size of the person, the type of training they're doing. But outside of that, let's say we stick with that 1 gram per pound of body weight. It's pretty much plenty enough for anybody. Myself, I eat a fair bit more than that. So people go, why do you eat a fair bit more than that? Because I eat a lot. Like I do. I eat more than the average person. I always remember my coach coached me for years. I made reference to a long time ago. He said, you're on that spectrum. You eat a lot for a guy your size. Well, if my protein was only 1 gram per pound of body weight, I just don't like the way my diet would look. It's not as appealing to me. So that's going to be a factor with clients too. Okay. So getting the adequate amount is actually pretty simple. These days, you get the occasional person who just doesn't have a palate for high protein foods. Fine. Then you're having a scoop of protein, verbally biox. Anyway, have a scoop of protein during the day. That'll help top you up. But when people push those insane amounts of protein on people, it's not helping them. Actually can do the opposite. You could go up too high. There is a thing called like the protein refractory effect or whatever. I'm not really sure what that ceiling is, but generally it's not too hard to get enough. And adding more won't increase your performance.
Okay. Last question. I'm gonna ask for a free coaching session here. Quick off the top of your head here. I'm 35 years old, about 30 pounds overweight. I play recreational beer league hockey once a week, and I sit at a desk 8 hours a day. What are my macros? I want to cut 30 pounds.
Man. What's this person weigh?
Sorry, okay, I'm 220, 5'9", 30 pounds overweight, play hockey once a week, sit at a desk 9 to 5. I'm an accountant.
Boy, this person's not going to the gym. Like our intake form is huge. So I get a lot of information out of it.
Don't weight train.
No weight training. Oh boy. This is a fun game. Off the cuff.
Yeah.
And we're talking, this guy gets like 2,000. I'm writing down some stuff here. And this person gets like 2,000 steps, maybe, like they barely move.
Yeah. We sit at 8 hours a day, minimal movement, hockey once a week.
All right. I'm going to go with 180 protein, 250 carbs, 65 fat.
Okay.
That's where I'm going to start.
Okay. Now I want to ask you why. Where did that come from? What did you use?
This is a low activity person.
Okay.
One. So one, I'm gonna start with protein. I want them to get enough that's gonna, adopt some balanced, eating habits. I gave them 180 grams. I'm like, that's plenty. Most people can hit that. Because again, there's about a dozen other questions I'd need answered to do this more accurately. Um, Carbohydrate intake. I feel if I go above 250, because this person is going to consciously start eating cleaner now that they've hired me. So now they're going to be responsible with their eating choices, and they're going to stop eating this prepackaged this or that. So he's going to bring in healthier food from home on his way to work, which is typically more filling. I give him 300, 350. I'm going to get I'm so stuffed. I didn't even track today. I'm going to get that objection. I don't need that. I lowered him a bit to 250. 65 is mainly related to what his protein intake is. Somebody who's making, some good choices on protein, about 180 grams, 65 is going to help them that they don't only have to eat, skinless chicken breast or whatever. They'll get a bit of variety in there, and he's not going to feel like he's some 80s bodybuilder eating chicken and broccoli all the time. So that's kind of how I put that together. But again, the data I need is a lot more. Hey, that's something that's actually changed. As a really quick aside, from coaching when I coached you, which was some years ago, and some of the earlier clients, and now is we do ask a lot more questions when people start working with us. The intake form is definitely expanded. The more data, relevant data, the better.
No, that was awesome, man. I know I put you on the spot there. I just wanted
That's
to
fun.
just kind of
Yeah.
see what you would come up with. That's great.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you today. I mean, I appreciate you taking the time. That was some really valuable information. I mean, I guess the moral of the story is, it's all about the data and the science and the fundamentals, and the trends and the quick fixes will come and go, but the fundamentals will always prevail.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And again, like I mentioned before in the beginning, when I think of fat loss, you are the guy. Like in my head,
that's awesome.
Like, like that's the Google keyword fat loss. Noel comes up. You are the guy I always think of.
And, I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate your knowledge and expertise. Keep doing your thing.
Thanks,
and,
man.
I wish you the best of luck in the future. And we'll chat again soon.
You bet.
Okay. All the best, Lou, and take care.
Yeah. Thanks again, man. Have a good day.
Okay. Take care, buddy.
Talk to you soon.